Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Bill Guy from Theta Gold Mines. We have 6 million ounces on the JORC 2012. All that mineralisations are within 320 metres of the surface. So we basically have a large shallow gold resource. We can see from the share price there's a bit of a jump when we released our feasibility study there from about 10 to 16 cents as the market started to get some belief behind the project. We're capped now at about 66 million market cap. We've just released an announcement today they've raised another $4 million as part of a three-part trench program we announced in June. So that money's all been delivered now, so we've got about $6 million in the bank, so we don't need funding. Essentially, for me, it's really about the team. We've got Rob's our MD. He's built 8 projects across Southeast Asia and around the world. He's delivered one of the most prolific builder of plants on the ASX. We've got me, I've worked all around the world, essentially mainly Western Australia, Europe, Southeast Asia, a little bit in Africa. And I was part of that team when Brian Gilbertson took over Jupiter Mines. He took Jupiter Mines from 18 million to about $1 billion. So there's a very exciting time for us. Brian was a very exciting boss, being African as well. We've got a guy called Finn Birkin. Finn and I worked together at Jupiter Mines. Finn's a banker and a mining engineer. He took Chishepi Mine, which is part of the Jupiter's asset base, from 0 to 500 people. So he took that blank piece of ground to an operating mine and one of the lowest cost producing mines of manganese in the world, and also one of the largest resources in the top 3 manganese mines in the world. And we also got our non-executive directors, predominantly fund managers and finances guy that bring in most of the money. We can see here over the last few years we've actually doubled the resource from 3 to over 6 now. We've got over 44 million tonnes there at about 4.18 grams. So it's a good grade. We also have a thing we call drill to validate, which we'll talk through later, but basically it delivers about $12 US an ounce. So our discovery costs are very low. We've got a plant that's fully permitted. We've got a tailings dam that's fully permitted. We've got infrastructure, roads, electricity, water, and a water license as well. So we're very close to getting this thing permitted now. The guys are doing a number of work streams on site. We expect those work streams to sort of end first quarter next year. This is just a little bit about the history of the company. The company was listed about 2012. It was really run at that stage by a prospector and some bankers. Essentially, they thought they was going to go mining straight away. About 2014-15, there was a deal done with a Chinese group where the company was offered $141 million to buy the project outright, cash. That process went on for about 12 months. Basically, the directors through that period collected a lot of debt, got themselves in a bit of trouble. That deal fell through. Then our financial director joined. He basically funded the project through a number of equity injections through 2015, 2016. Then he brought in Rob Thompson. Later he brought in me. So now we're developed into a very technical board and is very focused on delivering this project. One of the things I love about South Africa, when I was a student, everyone talked about South Africa. It's a little bit out of favour now, but the reality is it still has some of the best gold geology in the world. So when you look at those structures there, you see the little grey one, the grey outline there on the map. That's the Bushveld complex, the largest igneous intrusion on Earth. Also the richest metallurgic province on Earth. So there's a lot of metal in that area, a lot of heat, a lot of energy. Are sitting around the Bushveld complex in the Transvaal Basin, one of the biggest basins going. We have 3 historical gold fields. We own ours at TGME. We were the first one discovered. So in 1873, we were the first official gold rush of South Africa. We've got the Barberton field, which is dominated and controlled by Pan Africa. Pan Africa, a very large, successful London-listed company, done very well, been in operation about 30 years now. And we also have the Wits. So we know the Wits has basically generated nearly 50 to 60% of the world's gold production on a ton-per-ton basis. So this geology does deliver large amounts of gold. Cyril Ramaphosa. I'm actually a big fan of Cyril Ramaphosa. I think he's going to do a great job for South Africa. He's already increased net foreign investment by 416%. He's an amazing guy. He presents well on stage. He's a statesman. He's a billionaire already. He doesn't need any money. And he was the first guy to bring McDonald's to South Africa. When you look at South Africa, it's got Toyota builds cars there, Mercedes-Benz builds cars there. There's a lot of things going on in South Africa, BMW builds cars there. There's a lot of things going on in South Africa people don't really know or understand. And when you look at the Fraser Institute rankings, South Africa's managed to climb 23 places in the last 3 years. You know, we're in Sydney now, so we can see it just sits just behind Sydney there. So I think we all think Sydney's pretty safe. And South Africa just sits behind there on an investment basis. So I think, you know, Cyril and the guys have actually done a great job. One of the first things Cyril did was shut down the regional offices when he came to power and cleaned it out. So essentially, there's a lot of permitting and processing going on still. It's still a large backlog. But, you know, he actually gave those department deadlines, and they'll think they'll process most of those backlog, you know, in the next year. So he's really got that department moving, which is quite exciting for us, which means we can move forward now at a much better rate. We can see just Pan-Africa here, a great share curve. So just to show you that miners can make money in South Africa as well. You know, capped there about 244 million pounds. We got Jupiter, good story there too. Jupiter's effectively a yield play. If you actually look at, if you took money in the float in Jupiter about 18 months ago, it's delivered you about a 40% return on investment through dividends and yield. So, you know, those guys, the miners are doing well in South Africa as well. This is just to give you a sense of the tenement holdings. So we've got 620 square kilometres under management. Within that, there's about 43 historical underground mines. We've got about 1.3 million tonnes available as open pit material. So this dirt's very shallow. We've also got underground material there, about 4.5 million ounces. Really, for us, this is a story of growth and expansion and how we're going to deliver that to the market. So essentially, we're concentrated our first feasibility study on a thing called MR83. MR83 is already fully permitted for underground, so it's an amendment process. So when we amend MR83 to open pit, we'll be able to install the open pit there. We'll extend the drilling there as well. Then we're going to move into 341. 341 holds about 60% of the resource at the moment, we estimate. We need to drill that a bit further. Then we'll move into the underground material as well. And Valhoek. Valhoek's got about 300,000 ounces in it. So there's a clear path of growth and a pipeline of projects. We don't have to buy a project. We don't have to look to anyone else. We don't have to talk to anyone else. And really, to me, like I said, South Africa, the amazing thing about South Africa is the geology. When you look at that core tray, it looks like someone tipped a bag of gravel into that box. That's actually core from Theta Hill. It's broken, it's fractured, it's oxidized. And what this does, it actually drives the cost structure of this project. We can see we've got a low capex there, about 34 million. We've got a short-term payback of 1.2 years. And basically what we'll do is refurbish and build a predominantly new plant on top of the old existing infrastructure. We've got about 200,000, that's only about the first 200,000 ounces. But to me, what you've got to remember, that's the beginning of the story. So we've just got to, as we bring that first 200 in, we'll bring more and more in as we go along. We can see the life of mine, all-in sustaining cost is 764. 764 is a great number for South Africa. We can see there's a little hump about year 3 and 4 because basically we've put some of the capital in there, which is required to build 2 of the new pits. So essentially the board's always looking for ways to reduce capital and costs. And essentially because there's a high margin with this gold of over 39%, we can do that. Also, what you've got to remember, this feasibility study was done on $1,257 gold price. So the gold price today about $1,493, $1,497, close enough to $1,500. So if you have a belief in the gold price, every day this project's going to get a little bit better. You can see our all-in sustaining cost there sits virtually in the bottom quartile of cost for South Africa, which is, for me, a very important fact. When we used to evaluate projects for different organisations, one of the key things we would look for is that life of mine, all-in sustaining costs. And when you sit in the bottom quartile, that basically tells you have a project here that can survive all sides of the gold cycle. This just to give you some of the numbers and a sense of what we're doing here, but the head grade's about 2.7, so we've got a good feed into the mill. There's a good recovery there, about 91%. You know, the mining costs are very standard, $22 mining, processing. The administration costs in Australia, we use about $10. You know, Aussie here, we've used about $8 there, something US. So, you know, really the cost structure is fairly comparable. So how do we make this project bigger? And that's, to me, is really the exciting things. One of the things we have to be able to do is build this plant so we're going to grow and expand as well. So when we did the initial feasibility studies, well, we're really about redesigning this thing so we can actually build the plant and extend it very quickly with very minimum introduction to gold production once we get going. So we can see the one in yellow there, that's the first 500,000 tonne plant. And we can see there not only we have a lot of space in this area. So when we look at the green ones, that's the next phase. So that will take us up to about 1 million tonnes of production. And then we've also got an underground circuit there as well, potential for, you know, to take us to about 1.5 million tonnes of production. So in South Africa, you permit the footprint, not the production profile. So it's very important to have enough space to grow the plant. And what we've really done with engineers, when they get into the final design and stuff, we'll make tiny little adjustments. So it won't cost much, but allow us to grow this plant very quickly. So when you look at the crusher belts, they're going to be oversized. There's going to be a little bit of extra support. When we look at like the elution circuit should be a 1 tonne elution circuit. We've already increased that to 2.5 tonnes because it's only a 10% increase in cost. And by doing this, we'll allow us to build this plant very quickly. There's 8 CIL tanks in the yellow. You know, we just need to put another train on. They're modular. We put another one next to it. You've got another 8. Then you're up to 1 million tonnes of production. So the board's always thinking about how to grow the project. It's just really the JORC tables and get a sense where we are. I think really the main thing for me in this table is there's about another 500,000 ounces there available for us to convert almost immediately into an indicated resource. Once we convert it into an indicated resource, then we can put it into a mine schedule as a probable resource. And to me, that's where we need to go next. So when we look at this little map, it's very important. So you can see the boundary of MR83 in yellow. You can see the pink envelope for mineralisation. You can see the green holes, which ones we've been drilling. So we completed about 18,000 metres of drilling over the last sort of 18 months. The guys have been very busy. We're in the process of now building an exploration program to get in the 341. We have to be able to do that fairly shortly. And we can see the historical drill holes. So those red ones there are historical drill holes with over 1 gram of mineralisation. So we already know pretty much what the drilling is going to return, where the gold is going to be. Actually, even when they do these historical processes, sometimes they even put little ore blocks on it, so we have an idea of how much gold we're going to get. So we always put it into a whittle model to make a prediction that the drilling is going to be effective, that we're going to drill out a resource that's going to be economic. So we're always very careful with that money. We can see here the drill to validate process. So when we drilled Theta Hill, it was the oldest data set we actually had across the 43 historical mine sites. What the guys do, they scan the old maps. So we have maps from museums, we have maps from the mines department, and maps from guys that worked there historically. Out of that process, they digitized over 5,000 sample points and a number of drill holes. And what we've been able to do then, once we scan it, digitize it, we project it to surface, then the guys go and drill it out. So that's why we get this very cheap gold discovery cost. So when we say $12 US, that's an indicated ounce. An indicated ounce goes straight into that mining schedule then, once you complete your feasibility study. So we're always generating cheap gold for the shareholders. So really, why would you invest us? Really, I think it's a process of one, we're going to be re-rated as we turn more of this resource into a reserve. We've got a very low capex, you know, at $34 to $40 million US, someone's going to fund this project, you know, during this gold cycle. We've got a good operating margin of over 39% and a lot more potential for discovery as well. We haven't even, this field, out of those 620 square kilometres, there's not a magnetic survey, there's not a VTEM survey, there's none of that stuff we would expect in Western Australia that we take for granted. We've also got a proven team who've built many mines. Between the team, they've probably built somewhere between 13 to 15 mines across the team as individuals, and when you put them all together, you can also see the rand gold price very much tracks the Australian dollar price. So you're not at a disadvantage by putting your money into South Africa. Actually, the rand gold price now is at record highs and has been for a little while, and really the rand is actually going down a little bit. So there's a chance that gap will even widen. So when we look at our costs are actually going down and the price of gold is going up. So we have a natural hedge there as well. It's just the guys and the donkeys, some historical pictures. The guy who originally discovered this field was a guy called Alexander Wheelbarrow, nicknamed because he wouldn't buy a donkey. He was too tight to buy a donkey. He was an Australian. He actually wheelbarrowed that wheelbarrow all the way from Cape Town. So this is an Australian story and an African story. Just gives you a little about the structure of the company, how it works. We own 74% of the project. Some of our partners are Black B&E. Essentially, they're local landowners. There's an entrepreneurial component, but also really it's about social license. What the BE does actually is a legislated social license process, so you know you're sharing some of the wealth with the people who deserve it. You can see the team there, looking very pretty, except for me, obviously. But you've got Rob, 8, looking to build 9 now. You've got George, he's our local boy. His mum lives down the road. You know, he did spend his teenage years here on site. He knows the relationships. He did university in Joburg. Terence is actually an amazing character. He's an author, a lawyer, and an academic. And Terence has an amazing way with people. And there's a mine 100 k's up the road from us called Steelport, owned by Glencore. Terence actually did the social license process for Glencore at that mine. That mine is still there today, and there's also a smelter there as well, which is successful. Han Lee used to work for Kraft Foods. She was the financial director there. She's been with the company over 10 years. You know, she's actually a great girl, very tight with the money, so you've got to be very careful how you spend the money. Natasha is another Jupiter girl. So when they built the Sheppey, the first guy really was a guy called Brendan. Then Finn came in as the CEO. The next person to come in was Natasha. Natasha was the lawyer. She knows the mining law. She handled the unions. She looked after a lot of the social issues as well. She's a workhorse and a very clever lady. I'll just chuck this in just to give us a sense of geology. Basically, the blue is all carbonates and dolomites. So anywhere we see there in blue, we really feel has potential for open pit mining. When you see the red one, it's a more resistive sandstone. So it forms a bit of an escarpment. So really, once you get into that part, it's really about underground mining from there. But as we can see, there's still a huge area of potential here to go. We're sort of leaning towards now potentially 2 gold systems, an Archean basement rock. So this is really where Kalgoorlie meets the Pilbara. So you've got an Archean basement rock, and on top of that, you've got a Proterozoic basin, very similar to what we have in Australia here. We're just getting in the JORC tables now. I'll just flick through these real quick. We actually gave this presentation in America, so we're trying to be a bit clever by saying cheers, mate, and goodbye. But we won't do that here, obviously. But thanks for your time today.